Hello, what is good? You are listening to the Sports Station for the week of September 24th, 2014. I'm your host, Mark and Sarah, joined, of course, by Joe Vasile.
Hi.
And Mike Eccles will be here in just a moment. We're here to talk about a number of things, including some interesting college football matchups, both last week and this week. And we'll have, of course, Mike's famous final segment.
Of course.
Mhm.
Of course.
But first things first, we're going to jump right into the NFL right off the bat, fittingly enough, because we have a local game leading off the slate. Mike and Joe, so what were your impressions of this week? What were a few things you took away from week 3 in the NFL?
Well, there were some teams that are just not as good as we thought they were, some that are a little bit better, and Jacksonville and Minnesota finally made the right moves.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys need to just refer to me as the guru.
How did I know you were going to bring this up
I
first
think you
thing?
should just
First
call
thing.
me
What a shocker.
the man.
Well, every week he
The
does.
odds of Mike bringing up his success in the picture right off the bat were off the board in Vegas.
Oh, yeah. I put money down on it.
Excuse me, guys, but how did I do in my picks last week?
Hey, you were okay.
4 and 12.
No,
Yeah.
I reverse that, young man. 12 and 4.
12 and 4.
A lot of things that we saw in the NFL that weren't surprising, and I think
Well,
there
for
were
you.
some and I think there were some unfortunate things. I think that places like Tampa, Washington, even though they did well against Philadelphia, I think it's going to be a long season, especially D'Angelo goes down. D'Angelo goes down for the season. That's going to be a real tough one, for the Redskins. I think, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay. Oh, these are going to be some long seasons for these teams. And you know who even I predict is now going to have a long season, even though they showed a little life there early in the season?
Who?
I think the Titans are going to have a long season.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I picked
Yeah.
them to be last place in that division going into this year, and they've played like a last place team the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, what was it? The second weekend, they had the big game against Atlanta.
Week 1 they had the big win against Kansas City.
Oh, it was week 1. Okay, I know
And
they
then-
had.
But you know what? Kansas City hasn't shown to be very good this year.
No.
They've shown to be a big disappointment, a big drop-off from
They've
last
been pretty
year.
feisty the last 2
But-
weeks. They
but
almost beat Denver. They blew out Miami at home last week, which I believe I picked correctly.
But there's another one. I really thought that Tannehill had really put it all together for this season, and it's just looking rough down there in Miami right now.
Yeah, some of these young quarterbacks like Locker and Tannehill have tailed off a little bit recently.
Well, I don't even know if you could say that Locker is tailed off, because what is he tailing off from?
Yeah.
Being a bottom of the pack
Yeah, that's true.
quarterback.
I've never been a Locker fan. You're right.
But I do have to ask, though, I want to ask Joe this, because, Mark, you remember last week.
Yeah.
Someone was not very high on a young man from Michigan State quarterbacking the Washington Redskins.
Kirk Cousins? No.
I tell you what, I thought...
I'm
Yeah.
still not high.
I was going to say,
But-
Mike, your man crush on Kirk Cousins must have grown exponentially after last week.
I have to tell you, and I give credit to, I don't want to plug anybody, but ESPN for many years has had a contract with the Big Ten.
Sure.
And typically, especially when Cousins was still there, at 12 noon, both ESPN and ESPN2 would have a Big Ten game. So I watched a lot of Michigan State games, and he really impressed me. And I was actually surprised that they chose him when they have, RG3, and now it looks like the smartest move. And if you guys noticed on Sunday, the announcers even said that when RG3 was going to be out for a while, not too many people in Washington were disappointed that Kirk Cousins was now coming in.
No, understandably so. And someone mentioned, speaking of Michigan State, that there were, I think, 3 Michigan State quarterbacks starting on this past Sunday. One was Hoyer, one was Cousins, and I can't remember who the third one was now.
No, that was Michigan Chad Henne.
Yeah. I was
But he
gonna
wouldn't
say,
start any.
Henne was, Michigan. No, he did start for Jacksonville, but then got pulled.
Yeah, he had to.
Yeah, I can't remember who the third one
boy.
was, though.
He should work on
unfortunately.
his fastball again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He should go back to playing baseball.
So what are we going to do here,
Anyway.
Mark?
All right, well, we got plenty of games to dive into
Yes.
in week 4. The first
go.
week of the bye, so we actually have several less games
Who
than
are the
usual.
buys this week?
Since some really good bye week teams: Cincinnati, Cleveland, Denver, St. Louis, Arizona, and Seattle. So you think about Arizona 3-0, Seattle 2-1, Denver is 2-1, and Cincinnati's 3-0, and then you have intriguing squads like Cleveland and St. Louis who played pretty well last Sunday.
And with those teams on buys, a lot of people's fantasy teams are are probably not looking so hot this
Going
week.
to the free agency wire there.
Yes.
Oh yes, trust
Time
me.
to hit the waiver
I already have had to do that and made one or two tough decisions.
That reminds me, I have to do that.
Oh, I'm
that's
sorry.
right.
What's the record of the Cincinnati Bengals?
3-0.
It doesn't
3-0.
matter.
And the car and the
It's
other
not-
Super Bowl
Excuse me,
pick.
but who was the only person at this table who
It's
showed
not
that
im-
kind of faith
it's-
in the Bengals?
It's not important.
Well, to be fair, Joe. To be
Stop
fair,
living in the past.
to be fair, Joe wasn't here for the preview.
I was not
So
here.
it'd be hard. But yeah, Mike, your two Super Bowl picks, the
I did-
Cardinals and the Bengals, are undefeated
Are
so
both
far.
undefeated so far.
Granted,
yeah.
I
Credit where credit's due.
I did like Cincinnati to win their division, the AFC North. I liked them to win that division over Baltimore and over Pittsburgh. So,
Oh, you should have been here for the preview then, because
Yeah.
that's what we talked about.
son of a gun.
Of course, this guy over here,
What
he
do you
still
do?
wants to be
Black
a
and yellow?
Raven.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Raven.
he's got the purple.
Still.
That's
Even
right.
though we're wearing purple shirts today,
I'm-
he's got the faith in the purple.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Edgar Allan Poe fan, to be fair. So
Okay, well, that and you also like those Italian cookies, biscotti.
who doesn't
Yeah.
love biscotti though?
Hey,
oh,
hey, Vasil, hey.
I just find it funny that that's the last name of their owner. Also, It's-
That's right.
He
think
looks
everyone
like a
knows
guy
that
whose
now.
last name is Biscotti.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know what a guy with last name Biscotti looks like, but I
Like-
guess I do now.
No.
It looks
There
like
you
he
go.
looks like that.
He looks like that. Anyway,
All right.
continue.
So the first game we mentioned on the slate for
Yes.
Week 4
Yes.
is a big matchup for both of these 1 and 2 squads. The New
Uh-huh.
York Giants visiting the Washington Redskins in Week 1. One team coming off a win, one team coming off a very disappointing loss, guys. And line of this game, Washington is favored by 4 points. So, Mike, I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, this is a very tricky one here because if you look at the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, the Texans blew away the Redskins. Last week, the Giants went through the Texans like they weren't even there. So, logic says now the Giants will then go through the Redskins. But Cousins showed a lot versus the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, excuse me, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if the Redskin team has enough to support Cousins in this. I'm going with the Giants.
Yeah, I don't get how the Redskins are favored. Maybe it's because they're at home and judging off the records, but judging from, well, the games last week and some of the common opponents that they've had in the Houston Texans, you got to be picking the Giants in this one. The way that they looked, they seem to finally be hitting their groove in the new West Coast offense. Last week, the offensive line looked as good as it's looked in about 3 or 4 years. Rashad Jennings had holes the size that trucks could drive through.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Eli Manning was getting proper protection, and it's not like the Texans have some no-names on the line. They got J.J. Watt down there. It's not like
Well, not even just Watt, but
there wasn't anyone that he was going up
Reed
against.
and Cushing in his own
Yeah.
backyard.
Yep.
And yet Jennings alone had 176
Yeah.
yards rushing. A very surprising outcome, but it showed that the Giants are putting it together.
And also, I do like the secondary of the Giants, even without Walter Thurman.
Yeah.
I like Antrell Roll back there as the safety. I think DRC is doing very well. Had the pick last week, a couple of picks against Fitzpatrick. I like them in this game over Washington. Washington's a mess.
Yes.
Yeah, the
They're a
Giants'
mess.
defense looked like I finally thought it would look coming into the season. They looked like they were confusing Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
They created some turnovers.
And granted, though, it was Ryan Fitzpatrick. We're not talking about
yes,
a top 25
but he was a quarterback who has been good enough the previous
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah,
and it was,
that's
it
true.
was-
That's true,
And we
yes.
both picked the Texans to win, Joe. So
Yeah, we
I
did.
mean, we
We
both
did.
thought he would be good enough, and he wasn't.
I
And
did pick against the
the game
Giants.
was not as close to the final score. I would say 30-17.
No.
But regardless of that, Mike, I'm joining you on the Kirk Cousins bandwagon. I think this kid looked great last week, and I think that's only going to continue. And I still don't have enough confidence in this Giants team. If they do it this week, if they play well and win this week, then I'll start to show some confidence in them. But I'm not sold on them just yet. I am sold on Kirk Cousins as the quarterback of this team. I think that he has the ability to be an outstanding quarterback in this league. By the way, Drew Stanton was the third Michigan State quarterback to start this season.
right.
Stanton,
right.
Hoyer, and Cousins. I just looked that up to be fair.
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
I mean, I think that Cousins looked really good, and I still don't trust that Giants offensive line totally. I mean,
That's understandable.
I mean, I don't trust it totally. But it looked a lot better.
Oh, to say it did would be ridiculous.
Strides.
It looked. I mean, you have to do rush. You have to do something right to rush for 176 yards.
Yeah, see, I thought the line had looked amazing in that Jet preseason game where they finally seemed to put it together.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the first game of the year, it looked horrible.
Yeah.
But
So-
like I was saying, I'm on the Kirk Cousins bandwagon. And plus, you consider the fact that the road teams in these Thursday night games, even going back to Week 1 in Seattle, have played terribly. So I'm just going to take the Redskins to win this game.
All right.
All right.
So Week 3, the first game on Sunday, the Green Bay Packers, the first 1 o'clock game that we're going to pick, I guess, because they're all at the same time. But the Packers and the Bears in Chicago, Packers giving 1.5. Bears home underdog in this one, Joe. What do you think? 2-1 Bears against 1-2 Packers, who could not have looked worse last week.
Yeah, the Packers, like you said, they could not have looked worse last week. I think the Packers are finally starting to come down. I don't trust that defense whatsoever. And not that I trust Jay Cutler that much, but I feel like he gets a little bit too much flack that he doesn't necessarily always deserve. He takes the blame a little bit too much.
You're speaking directly to Mike, by the way, with that comment.
But yeah, I mean, I think the Bears have too much offensive firepower, and they'll torch the Packers' defense. And this one could end up being a shootout, but if the Bears' defense can lock the Packers down a couple of times, I like their chances.
Well, here's what I say to your Jay Cutler remark there, because, yes, I have spoken in the last couple of weeks about Jay Cutler. Not a big fan of his, but you know what? He's leading this team. Yep. He is the stand-up leader of this team. I like what I've seen, and yet I'm not understanding what I'm seeing in Green Bay. And I know, you mentioned, Joe, earlier about fantasy. There's a lot of fantasy people right now who are very upset because Aaron Rodgers is usually giving you 30 points a game, if not more, and he is just not doing anything this season, and I don't understand why.
Well, it's both. I have Aaron Rodgers on one team and Eddie Lacy on 2 other teams. Neither one of them has done a doggone thing. So it's frustrating to be a Packers fantasy owner.
So I'm going with the Bears.
Wow, are those actually Lacy's numbers? 36 rushes, 113 yards, no touchdowns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know all about it. Trust me. But, you have to remember, guys, the Bears went into Green Bay with McCown as their quarterback last year and won there. And I love the Bears wide receivers.
Yes.
I think they got a few breaks on Monday night. I think it's fair to say that, but they deserved to win that game and they played well. And me and Mike have almost gotten it a couple of times because I'm a Jay Cutler fan and he's not. And you're right, Joe. This Packers offense has looked so bad. Now I think this week, because I'm not a huge fan of the Bears defense, at least their run defense. I think this could be Lacy's breakout week. But I'm still really concerned about that Packers offense, and I like this Bears team. And the Bears were my pick to win this division, so I'm sticking with that. And that's one of the reasons I'm picking the Bears to win this game. I'm surprised they're a home dog in this one, but I like them to take this one, gentlemen.
Obviously, they're a dog because everybody's looking at Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
But I'm sorry.
Still blinded by the name.
Yes, I haven't seen that Aaron Rodgers yet this year.
So all 3 of us are on the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears.
All right, game number 2 of the Sunday 1 o'clock group, the Bills at the Texans. Both of these teams 2-1. So think about this, guys. One of these teams will be 3-1 by Sunday night.
Wow.
The Bills are on the road in Houston. Houston's a 3-point favorite, Mike.
Houston Texans at home. Obviously, I don't even think it's that difficult. I know that the Bills have had a decent start, but I'm going Texans all the way.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say the Bills go on the road to Houston and win, mostly because just of what the Giants were able to do last week against Houston. I think that Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller are going to do a fine job on the ground if the Bills' offensive line can play anywhere close to what the Giants were doing against Houston. And I think that E.J. Manuel, I still have some faith in him, and also Sammy Watkins as well. I like the Bills in this game.
Okay.
See, I don't have any faith in E.J. Manuel.
Well,
and that's one of the reasons I'm not a fan of the Bills. Plus, Texans are at home. And see what you know about Fitzpatrick, but Fitzpatrick's done a decent job so far this season, and I think he'll have some added motivation going against his former team in the Buffalo Bills.
But the Bills also know exactly what they're going to be expecting out of Fitzpatrick, how to play him.
See, I think that's overrated because this is a different coaching staff than the one that faced him before.
But
so
still a lot of the same players.
Yes, but these aren't a lot of the same coaches, and the coaches are the ones who are designing the game plans, and they're the ones who are, for lack of a better term, coaching up the players. And plus, Arian Foster should be back this week, and I'm really a huge fan of DeAndre Hopkins, the young receiver that Houston has. And Buffalo just looked so bad last week at home. I mean, I thought they had a better chance to win last week's game than this week's. That was at home, West Coast team flying cross country, and they looked totally inept in that game. The Chargers just dominated that one. And I think the Texans are going to take care of business.
You spent 4 years at a beautiful school like Marist to come up with coaches are the one who are doing the coaching.
Yeah.
My goodness.
I said for lack of a better term, Mike.
My poor uncle, the money he spent to send him to this beautiful school. Well, coaches are the one who do the coaching. Just the way you came out of your mouth.
Anyway, so you're picking.
I'm picking Houston to win this
Okay.
game. To be fair,
I'll be
coaches
all alone on
coaches
that one.
are the ones who do the coaching. To be fair.
That is true.
All right. Titans at the Colts. 1 p.m. game. Colts are 7.5-point favorites. They looked fantastic, but it was against Jacksonville, against the team we just talked about, the Tennessee Titans. I almost called them the Houston Oilers.
Houston
Yeah.
Oilers
Yeah, they
number one.
pretty much are.
Yeah, so the Colts hosting the Titans at 1 o'clock, 7.5 points. The Colts are giving up on this one on the spread. Just to all our listeners out there, we're not picking these games against the spread. I'm just giving that as a way for us to help make our picks, but we're just picking the team that's going to win.
We ain't no gamblers, but it's going to be the Colts by 28.
Yeah, the Colts are going to win this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think Colts all the way on this one. You know, they did look kind of shaky those first 2 weeks. It looked like they righted the ship, and it's tough to bet against Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck might be one of these quarterbacks now who you just never want to bet against or pick against.
No.
At home against Tennessee, this should be an easy win for the Colts, who need to get back to 500 as they're chasing the possibly 3-1 Houston Texans.
And that's the biggest reason why it's going to be a blowout is the Colts need to be getting back to where they should be.
Yeah, and how about Ahmad Bradshaw? Looked like
How about
the
him?
former Giant,
A little bit of a spark, yeah.
displacing, in my opinion, too late Trent Richardson, because I don't understand why anyone would be giving him carries in that offense when Ahmad Bradshaw is the spark plug that he's shown himself to be.
I think people watched a lot of Nick Saban games down in Alabama, that Trent Richardson, which we didn't see in Cleveland,
Yeah.
which they still think may happen in Indianapolis, but I'm not sure.
41 carries for 156 yards. I
Yeah.
mean, that's pretty porous. Yeah, Bradshaw should be the man there.
It's the potential I think they're chasing.
I've always loved Ahmad Bradshaw. I wish him nothing but the best.
You know what? Even as a Cowboys fan, as someone who's watched him play for all these years, you can't not admire the way he plays. He runs hard. He's a gamer. He's played through a myriad of different injuries.
They say he runs on the outside of his foot because he's had so many injuries that he can't
it makes
run
sense.
normally.
It makes sense.
I almost forgot he was a Cowboys fan.
Yeah. So the hat I'm wearing didn't give it away. I thought that would have
the
made it
big D?
obvious.
No.
Panthers at Ravens in Baltimore. 3.5-point favorites are the Ravens. Both of these squads 2-1. The Panthers looked awful on Sunday night. Blew what we all thought was a pretty winnable game at home against the Steelers, while the Ravens just snuck past the Browns for a last-second win on Sunday. Joseph?
Can I say this one's a pick 'em? I
No, we cannot. That's why we're here.
I don't want to pick either of the two of these teams to win this one. I want to go with Baltimore at home, though.
I was going to say pick 'em also. Yeah, I'm looking at Joe saying, all right, Joe, you give your pick, and I'm just going to say pick 'em.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't expect Joe to say pick 'em also. Yeah, this is an interesting one because Carolina, just as you said, Mark, looked far worse than anybody thought they could look against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they really did.
And I'll tell you know who looked really bad, which surprised me, was Kuechly.
Kuechly.
Yeah.
Kuechly. He did not have a very good game, and he is supposed to be the up-and-coming, rising star at the middle linebacker position, taking over that Carolina defense. Of course, I mean, that's why the Giants have John Beeson.
Yep.
And yet,
Luckily.
for the first time, I saw him not have a very good game against Pittsburgh.
Well, it's interesting. This is one of the things I meant to bring up. Kuechly, it seems to be having a little down year, but forgot this when we were talking about the Texans, but J.J. Watt has not looked like J.J. Watt so far this season.
He did.
He
No,
had
he
that
did.
one sack
He
against
had
the
a.
Giants.
He also had another tackle behind the line.
Yeah, but
what the Giants
overall,
did.
I didn't think he looked as good as I expected him to look, and he didn't have a good game the week before against Oakland.
Well,
no,
they
but
were
he
double
did make his
teaming him all
moves
week.
though.
Yes,
There
but
were a couple
they were
of
double
times.
teaming him last year too.
No, but there were a couple of times where he got past guys and they had no chance against him. We just either ran away from him or we avoided him. I don't blame Watt at all because I thought Watt on that defense looked like the only guy who was playing.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually remember one specific play where Watt had been on the one side with Justin Pugh all game long. Then he shifted to the other side and ran right past Will Beatty and sacked Eli Manning for about a 9-yard loss. And I just sat there and watched. Yeah, why is he going up against anybody other than Will Beatty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ball was hiked. He did a swim move and was tackling Eli Manning within 2 seconds.
And also, as far as the Texans go, they didn't have Arian Foster last week. They should have him back this week, so I think they're a better team than they were last week. But anyway,
But
Panthers,
I'm going to say I'm
Yeah.
going to go. The only reason I'm going to go with the Ravens is because I think the Panthers are going to try too hard to overcome what happened against Pittsburgh, and they're going to end up making mistakes.
Well, it's interesting because you think about it. This is what we talked about earlier. The Ravens blew out the Steelers on Thursday night a couple weeks ago, and then the Steelers go in and blow out the Panthers at home. So if you relate that, this should be a game that would go the Ravens' way based on those two games. But I'm picking the Panthers in this game.
Okay.
I like Cam Newton. I still have faith in that Panthers defense. I think that was just one bad game. I think they'll be fine. I think Kuechly will be back on his game this week, and I think that I'm really still not impressed with the Ravens. I mean, the win against the Browns, I think the Browns are a good team, but they're not. That's not a win where you'd say, boy, that's a statement win, boys. We took out the Browns. The Browns are still the Browns.
They're still the Browns.
Until they prove that they're not.
Not, exactly. I still think the Panthers are one of the best teams in the NFC, and like I said, not impressed with the Ravens. I'm going to go against you guys. I like the Panthers in this one. I'm going with the road dog.
And, of course, next week I will refer to the Carolina Panther middle linebacker as Kuechly.
I'm sure.
Yes, because I mispronounce his name every week.
Oh, that's a goal. By the end of the season, I'm sure you'll have all the won't even be the same letters.
Yeah, I'll just call him Ketchup.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, there you go.
We should get a sponsor for that. All right, Lions against the Jets. Jets really blew that game, and all the talk now is about whether or not Michael Vick should be their starting quarterback for the Jets, or at least should be a player who comes in when Smith isn't playing well, like he wasn't on Monday night, and who can kind of save the game. Whereas the Lions looked, at least their defense looked outstanding. Their offense kind of sputtered, but their defense looked pretty good on Sunday. Joe?
Well, let me address the Michael Vick thing.
Lions 1.5-point favorites in MetLife.
Here, before I make the pick?
Yeah.
No. Just no. Michael Vick is not going to be taking over for Geno Smith, or shouldn't be taking over for Geno Smith as a starter. And quite frankly, okay, maybe you put him in once or twice just for a different look. Maybe have him run the Wildcat. But if, A, the Jets' recent history with having Tim Tebow on the team, and B, Geno Smith's performance last year is any indication, they're going to be sticking with Geno Smith. And Smith is a much better quarterback than he's shown to be this year. He could just be going through a sophomore slump.
Really, you
Who
think?
knows?
But you think he's a better quarterback than he's shown this year, based on what?
Based on how he did last year. I think last year he was better than he was this year. And granted, you take that one timeout away,
I think he's
looking
shown
a little bit different. Right
I think
now.
he's shown more flashes this year than he did last year. I'm not sure that he's.
I think he was a little more consistent last year. I
feel
think
like
I think you're right as far as he's shown kind of more flashes.
Yeah.
And he's made some really, really impressive
there have been
plays.
more moments this year where I've looked at than last year where I've looked at Geno Smith and said, this guy looks like he's coming along, or he looks like he might be an NFL quarterback. Mike, what do you think?
But either way-
wait, sorry, Joe.
Either
we
way,
didn't get your-
Lions are
Lions. I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
if Geno Smith quarterbacks the entire game, Lions by 10, if not 14.
Yeah.
If Michael Vick does come in, it'll be closer, but Lions by maybe 3. And here's the
do you
reason
think that
why.
they'd put Michael Vick in if it's a 3-point game, though?
No. Michael Vick makes it a 3-point game if he comes in. If Geno Smith plays the whole game, it's the Lions by 14.
Well, see, I kind of agree with what people are saying and kind of what Mike is saying, that if you have a situation like you did on Monday night where Smith isn't playing well, but you have a winnable game, and Smith is playing like Smith is kind of being Geno Smith, then there's a situation where you put Vic in, because he's not a quarterback who, at least you hope, his quarterback is not going to make the same mistakes that Smith is making. Because he threw 2 interceptions and he could have had 5 on Monday night.
See, the thing is, Joe, is the way, and this is just the way I see it, is that every once in a while you just need some kind of spark. Now, I don't think Michael Vick is anywhere near what he has been in the past.
Well, I don't think
but he's something different. He's going to bring something different to the Jets offense at a time where if you're in the middle of the third quarter and the Lions are up 21-10 or 21-3, the Jets are going to need something different. And if they bring Michael Vick in, he's going to throw a little spark into that offense.
And plus, this is something that I thought about before, was that Rex Ryan, now I'm not saying this is a Super Bowl caliber Jets team, but Rex Ryan already had 2 Jets teams get that close to the Super Bowl. And one of the reasons they didn't make it was because of subpar quarterback play, because they couldn't really depend on their quarterback because their quarterback made mistakes. So if he feels like he has a team that is close to that level, and I feel like Rex Ryan always does, whether they do or not, he's not going to say, well, we'll just throw this year away, especially when you consider the fact that Rex Ryan that seat gets hotter with every single loss. So he's not going to sit back there and say, well, I'll just let him have this year. If he doesn't do well, whatever. Because he's in a position where he needs to save his job every year, because he's a general manager who would be more than willing to bring in his own coach if he had the opportunity to. So I think that
Well,
Rex wouldn't
he
be
would have done
hesitant
that
to
by now,
change.
though, if he
would have done
wanted
that
to.
by the third game.
I think he would, because Rex Ryan wasn't hired by John Idzik. So if Idzik wanted to bring in his own guy, he'd have brought him in when he got hired. He'd have fired Rex Ryan
No,
2
he
off
could, no,
seasons
he
ago.
he couldn't have fired Rex Ryan. That was the owner's decision to keep Rex Ryan. He couldn't have then come in and fired him after the owner then decided to keep him. And after last year was Woody Johnson who made the decision, who said, "I'm keeping Rex as the head coach."
Okay, so Ryan's not going anywhere. If he's
If
got
they
the
have a
approval
bad
of the
season,
ownership,
I think they might. He hasn't made the playoffs since, what was it, 2010? And in New York, that doesn't fly, especially when you have another team across town that's winning Super Bowls.
Giants haven't made the playoffs since 2011.
Yes, but they have.
They won the Super Bowl. Granted, that's pretty good
different, though.
results,
Exactly.
but they haven't made the playoffs.
A coach
It's
who's
only
won
1
Super
year.
Bowls is different than a coach who hasn't made the playoffs in a certain amount of time.
Well, let me ask you too, if you think this way. In any other position on the football field, if you've got a receiver who drops 2 passes in the first quarter, you replace him with somebody else.
Like the Jets kick returner
if an
who dropped
offensive
the punt.
lineman misses a block badly and the quarterback gets sacked,
Yeah.
you'll replace him. You'll put somebody else in.
Mhm.
Why don't we do that with quarterbacks?
I think the
Why
main.
does it, it doesn't it
I think the
seem
main
that we've
reason
seen
is because
too
the
long?
team looks at the quarterback as its leader, and I feel like if you don't have a quarterback to look at as a leader, the team kind of becomes fragmented and they're not really together. I mean, it's the same reason why you don't have 2 bosses. They always say in an office. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks.
Well, I mean that I'll draw an analogy to baseball. I don't know exactly how good this is, but I'll do it anyway. and
Go
see what
for
you
it,
say.
Joe.
A relief pitcher comes in, gives up 2 runs. You're going to yank him and put somebody else in. The starting pitcher gives up 2 runs. You're going to stick with him for a little while. You're not gonna pull him out. It's just a different role.
It is a different role, but it seem that we stick, and I mean talk about head coaches. They just simply stick with a quarterback who's not effective for too long.
And I thought about this the other day. I wanted your guys' take on this. Now, I'm someone who's watched both of these quarterbacks. This is a comparison. I'm someone who's watched both of these quarterbacks play their entire career. And so I feel qualified to make this comparison. Okay. I think Geno Smith is a poor man's Tony Romo. Because there are times we just talked about where he
That's a very high compliment to Geno Smith.
Where he looks
I think so.
good. Where he makes some throws like the throw he made to Decker in the Packer game where he just laid it out there.
Yeah.
Where you're going, wow, this guy can make some throws. And then there are some times where he'll make you pull your hair out and make you lose your mind.
Well, you know
and
what?
Romo does that a lot. I think Smith does it more in terms of the bad things.
More.
In Eli Manning's second season, he was like that a lot too. He'd make some throws that were like, wow. Most of the time, you were pulling your hair out.
No, he was consistently good. The Giants went 11-5 that year. He had some very good games. He was consistently good for the course of some entire games.
They did go 11-5 that year, but also he had a much better surrounding
he had Tiki
cast.
and Plaxico, Fair enough.
He had Tiki in his 2,000 all-purpose yards a year prime. He had Plaxico Burress.
Tiki
Amani
was a
Toomer.
Hall of Fame caliber running back at that point.
You had Strahan on defense.
Shockey was still there.
He had a lot more weapons than Geno Smith has to work with. But still, there were the times where you'd want to pull your hair out watching it.
Yeah, that's
fair. But they
fair.
stuck with him rather than going to whoever was number 2 on the depth chart that year. I don't think it was Kurt Warner. I think he was with Arizona.
No, Kurt Warner had just left. But
it's not important. But they stuck with him, and then they were rewarded a couple of years down the road.
I don't know.
I think it was Tim Hasselbeck.
Yeah.
They were rewarded, though, a few years down the road when all of that going through those growing pains ended up blossoming in a couple of world championships.
I don't know. I don't like the comparison.
No?
No,
Okay.
only because I think Eli, as overall, Geno Smith could never stack up to him at any point in his career, no matter how well he did in college, no matter how
that's
well
why
he
I'm
did
saying
his
he's
rookie
a
season.
poor man's Tony Romo.
I couldn't put him up there
because he has good and bad, but his bad outweighs the good. Unlike
his good
Romo's.
has
That's
not
why.
been anywhere near as good as what Eli in his second season or what Romo has done.
Okay.
Geno's good has not equaled that at all.
Well, again, but that's why I'm saying he's a poor man's version of them. But okay, fair enough. So, Mike, who do you like in this game, Jets or Lions?
Oh, no, I said the Lions.
Okay, I'm going to take the
I said
Lions.
Lions.
I'm taking the Lions, too. I said it last week. This is the beginning of the end for Jets and Rex Ryan. I think it continues this week. I like the Lions. I like Matt Stafford. And who in the world's going to stop Calvin Johnson for the Jets? How about nobody?
Nobody.
Yeah.
D. Milliner.
If he plays,
If he's healthy.
he couldn't stop Jordy Nelson, and Calvin Johnson's in another league.
Yeah.
Buccaneers at the Steelers, probably the worst team in the NFL. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe not, but if they're not, they're pretty darn close. Steelers 7.5-point favorites at home.
Let's all say it at the same time. 3, 2, 1.
Mike
Steelers.
Glennon. Oh, I thought okay.
What were you going to say?
Steelers.
What'd
He
you
said
say?
Mike Glennon.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mike Glennon should start for this Bucs team.
He should.
Josh McCown era is over. This is insane, and Glennon needs to keep developing because he had some good moments last year. But yeah, Steelers going away.
Yeah, going away.
Mm-hmm. Dolphins at Raiders. Dolphins 4.5 points coming off a bad loss to Kansas City. The Raiders in the midst of a bad season with Derek Carr at quarterback. 583 yards, 3 touchdowns for Carr so far this year. But neither one of these quarterbacks is off to a flying start, Joe.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Miami.
All
Just
right.
because they actually have a win this season. They're not the Raiders. And I just, the Raiders at this point, they had those 2 semi-decent years, maybe 5 years ago, and everybody got all excited, and they went back to being the Raiders again.
Yeah, they had a few years where they were beating some good teams. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they were 8-8. They just missed out on the playoffs the one year. Then they fired Tom Cable for some reason.
Yeah.
And it was all downhill from there because Al Davis went and became Al Davis again.
And they've also had some really bad draft choices. Of course,
terrible.
The worst was the quarterback.
Well, Hayward Hayward Bay too.
Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah, but I'm also
Muff
thinking
John.
about Gallery, the offensive tackle
Rob-
that they
Well, yeah,
drafted
but at
out
least
of
he was
Iowa.
at least he was a starter for them.
No,
You
he
can't say
started,
that
but he
about-
didn't. But he was supposed to be the next
Yeah.
Anthony Munoz. I mean, Gallery was supposed
the
to
next
be
Orlando Pace.
a 10, 12-year starter.
He was supposed to be a rock
9
on that
Pro
line.
Bowls,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Gallery just
Well,
Yeah.
the best thing about Gallery is that was the same year with the Eli Manning went number 1, and the Giants picked 4th that year.
Yep.
And there was a lot of talk that the Giants might just forego getting a quarterback and grab Gallery if he
No,
was still
I
on the
remember
board.
that because their offensive line was a mess.
Oh, it was.
And
it
the
was
talk
a, it
was
a
if
horror
Gallery
show.
somehow, some way fell to them,
Yeah.
that would be a savior for the Giants because their line
Yeah.
had been so
Yeah,
bad.
They would-
had
they
Luke
would
Pettigrew with nobody else.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
would-
exactly.
False start on Luke Pettigrew.
Well, you
Yeah.
think about the first 4 draft picks that year, I think, were Eli, Gallery, Fitzgerald, and Rivers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a great draft in 04.
Except for Gallery.
Yeah, well, except for
And
Gallery.
you guys might forget that
Even the 03 draft had it in the NBA had its darks. Darko.
Mike, who do you like? You taking the Dolphins?
I know that you're really good with the numbers, Mark. This may be the longest trip any team has ever made for a game.
Miami
to Oakland?
Seattle?
No,
Miami to
No,
Oakland.
I'm
they're
saying
playing
that
in
would
London.
Oh, yeah,
be
you're right.
longer.
they're playing in London.
He's right. I
The
forgot to
Oakland
mention
Raiders
that.
are traveling to London. That's going to wipe that team out. I mean, it's bad enough you're 0-3.
Yeah.
It's bad enough that Matt Schaub did not make the trip with the team.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now you're going to travel, what is it? Is it 10,000 miles?
I don't know.
Or 9,000 miles,
I
something
was
like
told
that.
no math would be involved in
Yeah,
this
some-
show.
something-
I'm sorry for the math.
something
It's
like
an
that.
outrageous distance.
It's
Yeah.
a
They're
long
going to
way.
this game. I can't imagine the Raiders in the state they are in now.
I think it
come out
might
of this
be
game.
7,000 or 8,000 miles.
Yeah,
it's a
an
long-
amazing
it's a long trip.
for a team that's 0-3, for a team that traditionally doesn't do well when it travels to the East Coast. Never mind to London.
Yeah.
This is I feel so bad for Oakland right now. Got to go with the Dolphins.
Well,
I can't see.
just wait until they end up moving to London permanently.
Raiders defense played pretty well last week in New England. They were down by a single point at I think at the end of the third quarter in that game. They played New England pretty tough.
Anyway.
So
I'm going to take the Raiders to get their first win in this
the
game.
R's.
Mhm. I'm gonna go with Oakland to beat
Wow.
to slip past Miami.
they're not even be able to keep their eyes
Totally
open. They're
unimpressed
so
with
tired.
this Miami team. Whatever. They play best when they're still the Raiders. They play best in
Time
those
is
situations.
upside down. It's like
They used to play games hungover. They're
there
the
might
Raiders.
be
Come
7
on.
or 8 time zones they're going in through.
Whatever. I'm going with the upset. I'm taking the Raiders.
Wow.
All right. Jaguars at San Diego.
Okay.
13.5 favorites are the Chargers. Jaguars.
People,
mean,
if you're
Jaguars,
a fantasy football player, go get every single Charger offensive player and
Yeah.
add them to your team now if they're
Yeah.
available.
Except
for Danny Woodhead.
What was his name that was so bad last week?
Who was that?
You know, no, never mind. I'm thinking of somebody. I'm thinking of somebody who wasn't on the Chargers.
Oh, no,
Okay.
no. Danny
Yeah.
Woodhead's out for the
Chargers.
year,
Chargers.
but yeah.
Chargers?
Get every Charger
I
player.
might take the Jaguars on the spread, but the Chargers will win this.
I'm Chargers too. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. What is the spread? Even though we're
13
13
and a
and a half
half.
points.
Wow.
That's a lot of points for the Chargers.
For an NFL game, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. That is the first 4 o'clock game. By the way, second
Okay.
4 o'clock game, the Falcons at the Vikings.
Ooh, interesting.
I got to go with the Falcons.
On the
yeah.
road in Minnesota, Falcons 3-point favorites.
Yep, Falcons. I mean, they're a better team. This is Bridgewater is starting for Minnesota.
Castle's
next week?
IR'd,
Yes.
so he's done for the year.
Okay, so
Mhm.
Bridgewater's first start against the Atlanta Falcons. I'll go with the Falcons.
Falcons got to be riding high. They got 11 games to prepare
Yeah.
for this. I'm on the Teddy Bridgewater bandwagon. I say he's going to win his first start. I'm
There you
taking
go.
the Vikings in this one. If I go down with the Vikings ship for the second time in 3 weeks, that's
The
fine.
Vikings ship.
This
Set
is
a
the
fire
spark.
at
This is
sea.
a spark that might help the Vikings.
Okay.
Yeah,
Viking barrier.
Bridgewater looked good against the Saints on Sunday. Granted they lost, but he had some moments, and I think this Vikings team has something to it. And I really like Teddy Bridgewater. He looked great in preseason and looked good again on Sunday. And this Falcons defense is still a mess. I don't care what giving up 14 points to the Buccaneers almost doesn't count because the Buccaneers are so bad.
Yeah, but the Falcons, all their weapons are healthy, and they look really good right now.
I think that's a fair point. They didn't look really good in week 2 against Cincinnati.
No,
They
but
looked
Cincinnati's a
fantastic
different
last
class
week.
Yeah,
against
against Tampa
the,
Bay,
the
I think they
Vikings.
rebounded.
Plus, they get the extra couple of days to
To
rest
prepare.
up.
That's fair. Okay, I'm going for the upset. You guys
All right.
can stick with the favorite.
Yeah,
Last
we
4
will.
o'clock game, the Eagles at the 49ers. This might be one of the best games of the year as long as the 49ers play like the 49ers, which they haven't been the last 2 weeks.
I think the 49ers are playing like the 49ers. I just don't think they're as good this year. From what I've been able to see watching their games, Patrick Willis looks like he's lost a step or two, and they're really missing Olden Smith out there on defense right now.
Yeah.
Kaepernick seems to have taken a half a step back. He's still doing some good things, but he's not the same Kaepernick that we've seen lead that team deep into the playoffs the last few
Yeah.
years. I like the Eagles in this one, not only because of that, but because they actually have looked very good this year. I've been impressed by the Eagles.
Yeah, this is what I talked about in our NFL preview show, Mark. This is why I took Arizona. I also took Seattle in that division to go to the playoffs or even win the division. I just didn't see the 49ers being able to keep up with everything they've lost, and they haven't. They've actually shown me, and just like you said, Joe, this was the 49er team we actually pretty much expected to be. We didn't expect them to be the team they were 2 years ago, and
Or even last year.
And you know, I forget who made the point last week. I think it might have been Mark. Harbaugh is not the kind of coach you want in when things start to go like
plus
this.
the fact
because
there are already
that's true.
rumors.
He's the kind of
there
guy
are already
that-
rumors flying about him
Yeah.
going to Miami or him going back to Michigan.
Yeah,
like
he is the kind of coach that the players will start to tune out when things go like that, just because of his kind of aggressive, borderline abrasive style.
he never looks happy. He never smiles. They could win the game by 40. He'd be in the press conference. I think my dad said he looks like he sucks on lemons every evening, which is an interesting way to put it.
he
But
is
yeah.
so intense. Let me give
Yeah.
you. We got a little bit of time. Let me just tell you how intense he is. I was at an Indiana State football game against Western Kentucky
Okay.
back in 1996. He was the Colts quarterback. He was injured, so he was inactive for the game. His father, Jack Harbaugh, coached Western Kentucky.
Okay.
There was some kind of play that happened right before halftime. Harbaugh was standing on the sideline with his dad and the Western Kentucky. He chased the referees into the dressing room. And now think about
What
this.
a maniac.
This is late in the season. It's just at Western Kentucky, Indiana State. There might be 3,000 people at the game. And yet Harbaugh, his intensity, chasing the referees into the locker room because of a call that he thought went against Western Kentucky.
And he wasn't even a coach.
And he wasn't even a coach. It was his dad's team. He had a cast on because he was hurt. But yeah, he's just too intense. And I agree with you. His intensity is not going to help as this team is coming apart.
Yeah.
If the Eagles' offensive line does what they've been doing,
Yeah, if they can hold it together.
a close game,
Yeah.
but they do beat the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I hate to say it, but this Eagles team, their offense looks impressive. Again, their defense isn't great. I think when they come up against good offenses, it's gonna like they did against Washington. It'll put them in some trouble. The only problem is Washington didn't have a defense. But yeah, this Eagles team just looks like they're hitting their stride early in the season. And this 49ers team just does not look like they have any life.
No.
Ever since the second half of that Bears game, it's just been all downhill, and I don't think it's going to get any better.
No.
Eagles at 4-0 put them regardless of what other teams do in that division, is going to put them in the driver's seat for the NFC East.
Oh yeah,
And
without a doubt,
They
Without
deserve
a
to be
doubt.
there.
Sunday night game. My Dallas Cowboys coming off a 21-point comeback in St. Louis against the New Orleans Saints, who have not looked like the Saints
That
at
did
all this season.
That did wonders for my fantasy because I have Bryant in one league, DeMarco Murray in the other. So first of all, thank you for that. As
Yeah, you're
much as I'm
welcome.
disappointed that the Cowboys won.
Oh, come on. It was
That
against
was-
Austin Powers and the St.
Oh,
Louis Rams.
stop it.
My goodness.
Yeah,
he starts
21 to
this,
nothing.
This kid starts texting me, how about those Cowboys?
Hell yeah.
And I'm thinking, it's Austin Powers you're playing against.
Stop it. Okay, so then
That's
by
a
that logic,
horrible Rams
by that
game.
logic, you weren't surprised when they came back then.
No, anybody could come back against that
so,
kid
so you weren't
who's
surprised.
playing quarterback
so
against
so
the Rams.
you weren't surprised when they came back?
Of course not.
Re-
Any team
wow,
could have
all
come
right.
back against that Rams team.
Stop it.
All right. Anyway, Saints.
Yeah, Mike?
I got to go with the Saints.
my pick.
Yeah.
3-point favorites in this one.
Got to go with the Saints.
right.
It's about time that Drew Brees and his offense comes to life.
All right.
Agreed. Who do you
Come on,
pick,
Cowboy
Mark?
fan, we're waiting for you.
I think we all know.
I like my Cowboys.
You like the Cowboys.
in this one.
All right.
this-
What's the Monday night game?
All right.
What's the We knew that was
This.
coming.
All right. Monday nighter, the final game of Week 4, the Patriots visiting the Kansas City Chiefs, who played pretty well last week. Probably played better than the Patriots did last week. Patriots 3.5-point favorites on the road against Kansas City. Well, can the Chiefs make it 2 in a row, boys?
The Chiefs will have a very loud stadium, but it's Tom Brady and the Patriots by 7.
All right.
Yeah, how we were talking about. I forget who it was just a few minutes ago about becoming a guy you don't. Andrew Luck being a guy you don't bet against. Tom Brady is the original guy you don't bet against.
Well, you could have bet against them
Well, I
last
mean-
week and won some money. They only won by 7 against Oakland at home. I'll say it again,
Still
gentlemen.
like him over the Chiefs.
This Patriots team is not that good.
Neither are
They're
the Chiefs.
not. The only difference is the only thing they have going for them is that there's no one else good in that division.
Listen,
And that
listen.
Chiefs team the last 2 weeks has had their moments, and they dominated on the road
Have the
against
Chiefs,
Miami
have the
last
Chiefs
week.
forced a turnover yet?
I don't know. I just know they've.
I don't think they have. I vaguely remember hearing that. Quote me if I'm wrong. Certainly
And
correct
you quote.
me.
And I quote.
Yes. I meant correct me if I'm wrong. But I think Vince Wilfork has more interceptions this year than the entire Chiefs team.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. And Richard Sherman, too.
To be fair, Vince Wilfork is a very nimble man.
At what, 435
I don't know.
pounds?
I see Vince Wilfork. A lot of words come to mind. Nimble is not one of them.
one of them.
He's not quick on his feet like a cat or anything like that.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, Chiefs
I
don't
like the
have it. Do not
Patriots.
have any interceptions. I'm not sure if they have any turnovers this year.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get one this week against.
I'm taking Kansas
Pass.
City, gentlemen.
All right.
I'd like the dog. I feel like I'm going against you guys a
You're
lot this
funeral.
week. I'm going with underdog heavy
Good.
this
Well,
week.
finally, Mark, we're not going to hopefully finish with the same record.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we won't finish with the same record again. We were both 10-6 last week.
And who was 12-4?
It doesn't matter.
I don't remember.
Dan
The
Brown.
elder one.
Yeah.
Your wife, I think, was.
Yeah.
She made your picks
She
for you, I
makes the
bet.
picks.
No,
just-
she lets the
you just
dog
do
make the
proxy.
picks. The little
All right.
14-pound dog we got makes the
All
picks.
right. All right. What
All
else
right, guys.
got?
Do we have time to? Oh, that's it for Week 4
Wow.
of the NFL. We'll be back next week to give you our picks. Hopefully, we'll do
Okay.
better than Mike this
yeah,
week, Joe.
Here's to hoping.
little bit of college football that has very, very sad news. Very, very sad news. I was really upset to see.
Who did Indiana State lose to?
No,
Yeah.
no. A little serious note
Fighting
here.
Larry Bird.
That Rutgers will lose their tailback for the season. I thought James was really showing me a lot. I think that he was a real offensive force. And to lose him with an ACL torn up for the season, I think it's going to... Rutgers, before the season start, didn't think they had a real chance in the Big Ten this first season.
Of course not. They have Gary Nova at quarterback.
But they... You know what? Their defense has been phenomenal.
Oh, their defense
and then
was really,
James
really good.
has kept
Yeah.
them in games. But losing him like this,
Yeah.
I think it's going to hurt Rutgers a lot.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
whatever chance they had of contending in the Big Ten this year is gone
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
I mean, hey guys, I was
They might win
the-
enough games to be bowl eligible,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
was-
don't know about any contending.
I was at
Right.
the Penn State game, and losing your starting running back means they're going to have to rely more on their quarterback.
And that's not good.
which should scare every single Rutgers fan that
Yes.
exists in this world.
Yeah.
Because Gary Nova is not the answer in any way, shape, or form for that football team. Relying on him more.
No, I agree with you, Joe. Maybe 6-6.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
Do we have time to get into some college football? There were a few interesting games, or should we save that for next week?
No, we can save that for next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So from
What do we
that,
got?
we're going to jump right into whatever Mike Eccles wants us to jump into here, because he has the floor.
All right, here we go, guys.
What do we got? What do we got this
Here we go.
week?
What I want you to come up with, in your opinion, the greatest team, no matter what sport it is, the greatest team that didn't win a championship that year.
Okay,
76,
okay, so-
76 Buccaneers.
So this is
0-14, right?
so this is for a single year.
Yes, it'll be,
Single
for
year.
example, two that come to mind for me right off the bat, the 1968 Baltimore Colts,
Yeah.
13-1, but then lose to Joe Willie in the
Yep.
Super Bowl, and of course the 1978 Boston Red Sox. They won 99 games. They just happened to falter at the end of the year, had the playoff game, the Bucky Dent home run, and even though the Red Sox won 99 games, did not win even their division. But that was just a team from top to bottom, especially in May, June, July. From the first batter to the last batter to the ninth batter, you had no breathing room if you were an opposing pitcher. The 13-1 Baltimore Colts were just an unbelievably
They were a juggernaut.
physical team, and
sure.
just Earl Morrall winning the NFL MVP, and just couldn't do it in the big game. So now you guys pick a team, no matter what league, doesn't matter what sport, the greatest team that never won it all.
All right. Well, the first one that comes to mind I have to go with is the 2007 Patriots, the 18-1 team.
Yes.
Yeah.
That team, regardless of the fact that they didn't win a Super Bowl, was the greatest team I've ever seen. Greatest NFL team I've ever seen. I mean, with Brady and Moss, and even their defense, which took some flack because of the age of some of the players they had, like the late great Junior Seau,
Seau,
who was who was still productive at the end of his career. Mike Vrabel and Teddy Bruschi were still productive members. They had Asante Samuel at cornerback, and I think
Moore
and
in
Richard
his
Seymour
prime,
and Will
Wilfork and Seymour,
were
yeah.
still on the team.
Hey, they were 16-0 in the regular season.
I mean,
so
that was
those little guys did fine.
Yeah, they were a fantastic team, and also
And I believe there was Rodney Harrison.
Rodney
was
Harrison,
still
I
on
think,
that
was still on that
too,
team,
yeah, at the tail end of his career, and also switching sports, the UNLV Running Rebels men's basketball team from 90 and 91. It was 34-0 before losing in, I believe it was a semifinal to the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, it was
I
the
mean-
Final Four,
Yep.
and I still rate that next to, and we didn't talk about this last week. I still think that's one of the greatest upsets in sports
Yeah.
history. The same players on that Duke team, with the exception of Grant, the same players lost by 40 points the year before to UNLV. Same players a year later, and yet Duke beat them. That was an amazing accomplishment.
And one other team I have to give props to here, maybe not the greatest team ever, but the 1976 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
Possibly the greatest defensive team ever assembled. All the attention goes to the Steelers team that won Super Bowls because they won 4 in that decade. But the 76 team that didn't win a Super Bowl started the year 1-3 and then proceeded to win 9 games. Let me read you some scores from their season. If they started off 1-4, they won. These are the games they won after that: 23-6, 27-0, 23-0, 45-0, 14-3, 32-16, 7-3, 42-0, and 21-0.
It was an amazing
nine-game winning
defense.
streak. Yeah.
Joe Green, they were all in their prime. There was only one problem. That was the year of the Raiders.
Yeah.
13-1 in the regular season. John Madden. It was Stabler, Casper, Bolitnikov. It was just their year.
And plus, the Steelers had a myriad of injuries that year. Bradshaw was hurt for a period of time, and then going into the AFC Championship game, they had no Franco Harris, no Rocky Blyer against the Raiders. But yeah, I agree with you, Mike. Regardless, I don't think anyone's going to beat that Raiders team. That Raiders team won, I think, 13 games in a row or 15 games in a row on their way to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they were
It was
just unstoppable.
a fantastic team. Lost second week of the season and finished the year 13-1 and won it all.
All right, Mark, we've given him enough time to think.
Okay, yeah.
Joe?
Okay.
You're
Well,
up.
since you guys each picked 2,
Yeah.
I've got 2 as well.
Sure, go
One,
ahead.
the 1988 New York Mets. That team was
Ooh, man.
fantastic.
Yeah, you know what?
That team was the 86 Mets with David Cohn in the starting
Yeah,
rotation.
20
as well.
and 3
Right.
that year. They were one Mike
And,
Scioscia home
yes,
run
they
away.
were one Mike Scioscia home run
Yeah.
away from going back to the World Series and probably beating the A's. But that team, really that entire era of Mets should have won more than just the one World Series. But 88 was
Absolutely.
certainly a year.
Yeah.
They got an MVP caliber year at a Howard Johnson. They got an
And-
MVP caliber year at a Darryl
Cy Young
Strawberry
caliber year out of
and
Coney.
Kevin McReynolds.
Kevin McReynolds was the key. I think he was the key to that team being much better than the '86 team.
Yeah, and you could say that Hernandez and Carter were a little bit down, and they certainly were at the tail end of their careers. But what you were getting from those extra guys, plus I want to say Magadan was up at
Yes.
that point.
Was
Greg
he? I don't-
Jeffers
yes.
at that
Magadan
point.
wasn't a huge part of the team at that
No,
point.
no,
but he was
didn't come
there.
up
He was
until-
a much
Ma-
bigger.
Magadan really didn't flourish kind of until '90 once Hernandez
No, but he was there.
went by the wayside.
Exactly,
but he was on those teams. You still had Mookie Wilson. You still had the core guys from '86.
Sid
plus-
Fernandez, Jesse
yeah,
Orozco,
plus
yeah.
those extra guys.
Wait, no,
and that-
Orozco was on the Dodgers then, I think. My mistake.
Yes. And they had traded Kevin Mitchell by that point as well.
For Kevin McReynolds.
Yeah.
Kevin
went on to
McReynolds
win
was
the-
amazing that year.
And the
Yeah.
very next season, Mitchell
won
went on
the
to win the
MVP.
MVP with the
Over,
Giants.
and quite frankly, you can make an argument for Strawberry or Hojo to have
In
won
'89?
in '89
when
the MVP.
Mitchell led the league in homers and RBIs?
I think Hojo had a 30-30 year and was like one home run
Yeah,
shy of
Mike, you
beating
were right.
Mitchell.
You were right. Magadan had a 314 at bats for the Mets in '88. You guys
yeah,
are both
he
right.
had-
My
he had
mistake.
emerged, yeah.
Yeah.
And what was your second team, Joe?
The second team, the 82-83 University of Houston men's basketball team that lost to
Phi
NC
Slant
State.
Jama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clyde Drexler, Ralph Sampson, Hakeem Olajuwon, all on one team. There's a reason why the NC State winning that tournament was such a big upset. Not only because they were such a high seed, but because they were going up against one of the greatest teams assembled of that entire era.
2 years in a row.
Yeah,
You know,
and beat 'em.
two teams we forgot were the 2001 Mariners, who
Yeah,
won
that's right,
116
116.
games,
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
and the 1980 Russian Olympic men's hockey team that lost to
heck with them.
the U.S. Lost in the Miracle on Ice.
No, what I think with that team, not so much that team, but who they added afterwards, that they went on an unbelievable streak. After losing that game, then they got some of the younger players. They formed one of the greatest lines, the KLM line. That was Krutov, Larionov, and Makarov. Fetisov and Kasatonov on the defense with Tretiak in the goal. After that game, you couldn't touch that Soviet
I
team.
have a Fetisov jersey in my my closet at home.
Fetisov, there you go. There you go.
Dirty communist.
Weren't they all?
He saw the light and came to the New Jersey Devils. He saw the
He
dollars.
loved wearing the red,
Oh,
Mike.
well,
Oh,
hey.
the red and green at that time. Though.
Yes.
They had the old Christmas Devils. Speaking of which, I am very happy that hockey is back.
I think we all are. First hockey preseason game, Devils beat the Rangers, in fact, at MSG.
Yes.
In one of their first preseason showcases. That is it for us on the Sports Station this week. We appreciate you listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and also check us out on Facebook at The Sports Station. We appreciate all the support, all the listeners out there. We appreciate any feedback that you guys can give us. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We will see you again back here next week with a baseball playoff preview, Joe.
Ooh, I
Mhm.
can't wait.
So don't miss that. I don't think any of us can.
I think the Yankees are going to win.
I agree.
Against the Red Sox.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 All right. So we will be back here next week to tell you about that and a whole bunch else on this Sports Station. Thanks for listening. See you next time.